Probably for editing and videos, probably not. For me, it's been a little while. It's now springtime. I was out of town for about a month, but I'm gonna get working on the Camaro. Probably doesn't look like springtime, but I assure you, it is springtime. It just happens to be a little bit colder of a day, and I myself am cold. But we're gonna paint, and that's why the springtime comment was important. I'm gonna finish up the body work on this thing, and we will sand it down, get it all fillered over on those other low spots, do a skim coat on the roof, and get the rest of these trim panels off, and get, I think I got some old paint I'm gonna use, but I gotta get a new compressor, and we will get this thing painted, I promise. Cut and buffing after painting, I don't know if I'm gonna have time for that this summer just yet, but I will get paint on it, and it's most likely, well, you'll see the color. So let's pick up where we left off. Okay, well, now you don't need to see my head probably, but this is the filler that I'm using. Evercoat makes it. It's Rage Ultra. Yeah, hardcore. Yeah, you can probably zoom in on that, but I did some research. I've used all the cheap Bondo stuff from Home Depot on pretty much everything prior to this, and it works fine. I've had a truck that I did a restoration on, the Black Blazer. You might have seen it 3 years ago. Nothing's cracked, chipped, or fallen off yet. It might. I don't really know. I just, I know that stuff can be kind of a bear to sand, and it's not the smoothest in the world, so I wanted to go with something a little bit nicer, more expensive. This one is more expensive on this Camaro project, since I've got to do pretty much a skim coat on the entire roof of the car, because it's got a small little pitting. So I wanted something that sands real easy and goes on thin and easy, and I'm gonna see how I like it. I also bought a new set of these putty knives just because these all came off Amazon. My old ones, they were getting real old and real dirty, and I wanted some different sizes. So, and it came with the hardener on Amazon. So pretty straightforward stuff. Nothing to see here. And mixing Bondo is pretty much always the same. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix this up on a piece of cardboard, add my hardener, and then start putting it on the car so I can let it dry so I can start sanding. Fun. Step one, rinse. I cleaned off a wrench, so that'll do. Feels like Bondo. Alright, I don't know when the SD card died, but what I was trying to say is do not pour too much out at a time. I had a huge blob on there. Do as I say, not as I do. I wasted all of this, and it was the fun, you know, run around the car and try to smear as much filler on it as possible, and while it was hardening up. So now I got a bunch of work to do sanding wise, and I really didn't get all the car. I did get a good amount over there on that far side that's got a huge low spot. So I'm just waiting for this to fully cure up. I may mix up some more Bondo and do some of those flat black areas just with a better coat, and then we'll keep going. I'll try to film it this time. What I was trying to say is all this is basically going to come off. I just got a ton of work to do sanding wise. It should be left looking probably something like this to get rid of that little pitting. That's all I'm trying to do here. Now there are some areas that needed a lot more over where that tree or something fell on it, but I'm probably gonna wait for this to dry. I've got the fan going and wearing a respirator, and then I'll start sanding on this with 80 grit. Okay, this is what I'm going for. Respirator's still on, so bear with me, but the skim coat was real thick, but you see all these little white dots? Those were all the pitted marks in the low spots that the Bondo or the filler has basically filled in the crater now. I don't think it's totally done just yet, but it did a good enough job. The body on this thing is really rough in a lot of places underneath where the soft top was. And you can see there's old filler here that I didn't do. So I don't know, at some point someone did some filler work and it is really lumpy on here and on the other side. So I'll probably fiddle with those for a while, but my plan here is to, I think, get a couple cans of high build primer and then spray those on top of this just to get a uniform surface so I can really see the pinholes or see if they're still there, the low spots. It's hard to tell right now with all the dust and the different colors, but basically I want to go over it again with another high build primer and then really see what it looks like, see how smooth it is, and then I'll probably do a couple more rounds of sanding, and then I will have to probably go around with some glazing putty and just fill in the bigger pinholes in this kind of stuff. But I'd say I'm alright with it for the first pass. I'm going to try to show you on camera. I don't know how well it's going to come out. So the primer filler, it's a very light coat just because it's a pain in the butt and these cans from Home Depot kind of suck. But it's a light coat and I can see all of my, my Bondo through. If you, you can kind of see those spots in there, and those are the low spots. I know there's some much bigger low spots in these areas that I haven't done any major work here yet. I was just kind of trying to get all this pitting in these areas. These are the areas that I'm going to try to hit with glazing putty now. So that would be the plan, but in a lot of areas the roof looks fine, but I think I can at least see the indents, a lot better. Some of the areas where there is pitting. Right there. There's some spots there. And then a lot of the areas it's been filled over. So I'm going to go through and I'll just glaze these things, and then I'll probably sand this all down again, and probably another guide coat or another coat of filler primer and see. In case you're wondering, this is the glazing putty that I'm using. I got it from Advanced Auto. It was cheap. I didn't get the two-part stuff specifically because I don't want to mix the filler. I just want to squeeze it on there like toothpaste and then spread it out with this. This was freshly painted, so. And I think I'm just supposed to be able to squeeze it out. And then I'm gonna kind of use this car as my mixing area, but wow, this stuff's pretty thin, and it works well like glazing putty, so that's nice. I mean, I think a lot of the car needs it, unfortunately. So just a lot more of this. Says it dries quick. I didn't really read a ton of the instructions. Just in the store, I picked the one that I would not have to mix. I'm not going to mess with anything down here. I'm just going to work on this top part. Okay, I laid down some more of the actual filler and a lot of the real areas that needed a lot more than you would do with like a glazing putty or a spot filler. This is the main area over here. So now I did a lot smaller of a batch because it always goes farther than you would think, and I think I got the right amount of hardener in it this time. It didn't all lock up on me. So yeah, those big crumbs are gonna be, I'm gonna have to sand those out, but this area is so wavy. There's such a high spot there that might even be higher than what it should be, and then it's real low in the rest of these areas. So I got as much in there as I felt I could. Now I gotta let this stuff dry and I can go start sanding again. Progress, it is working, and you can kind of tell it's pretty neat. We're uncovering different layers of stuff, but if you look up top, the main problem area You can see, let's go, the red areas. All right, see right here, the red areas are the deepest pitting because the filler primer didn't fill them up, and then I did the skim coat with the glaze putty. The areas that are left red have the deepest pits, then the white stuff would be the filler primer, so the not very deep pits, and then the bare metal is the high spots. So as I'm sanding over stuff, it's kind of leaving certain things behind, and then that way I can tell what's, you know, what was a low spot, what was a high spot, and what's the medium spot. And then it's probably gonna be real hard to tell on camera, but if you look across it, it no longer, you know, it looks pretty smooth. So we're moving in the right direction. I'm gonna clean this off, shoot it with another coat of filler primer, and that'll probably be it for the roof. Then I need to really work on these edges and corners with these tight body lines. There's still a big ridge where the old soft top ended basically, and they didn't do this red paint. So I can feel that with my finger. It's pretty obvious. I'm gonna have to work on sanding and blending that. And these sides are just super lumpy. For whatever reason, they are, I don't know, maybe the 70s and 60s cars just weren't that straight of metal to begin with. But it's pretty lumpy, and especially on the other side. That one's gonna take a lot of work, and I've really gotta do this sanding by hand. So it's gonna take more rounds of Bondo and more rounds of sanding on the sides, but I think I should be done with the roof, and I'm not gonna sand it again with the 80 grit that I've been using in the power. It'll probably just do the next round after this primer. I'll probably hit it with starting with 120 or 240, because I don't wanna go all the way down to the metal again. I wanna leave an actual layer of primer. And if I've got to, I'll do another round of the filler primer and then just a light scuff with like 600 before I actually spray, just so there's no metal going direct to paint. Okay, I have the light off here and I'm trying to focus the camera. If you've ever done body work, it's all about lighting to be able to see. And with the light on, the overhead LED lights, it's just too bright. It's kind of looking like it's showing different things, but if you look down here and get at the right angle, you can see the hood is pretty much perfectly, or the roof is perfectly smooth. Yeah, my paint has some zebra stripes, tiger stripes, and it's a thin layer of this primer, and I just kind of shot it on there, so that's why it's hard with the light on. But you can see, let's see, right there, you see those guys? There's a couple areas on the passenger side that still need filler, but everything else, all this haziness, you can tell it's just the tiger striping from the paint. It's not actually pitted spots. And there are a few others here. And where are they? Somewhere down here, I thought. I could be wrong. I think maybe right there could use a tiny bit of filler, glazing putty. But for the most part, a lot of this stuff is then pretty smooth. I can see it with the naked eye. It doesn't have any pitting anymore, so we're good on that front. This stuff, it's gonna be, again, real hard to tell because the paint is just not thick. But, you know, this is smooth. There are some lower areas, I think over in here, yeah, right here, it still needs smoothed out. You can see that dent there on camera. You can see another dent. That's pretty good. There's still a few areas that are a little wiggly. You can feel them and see them with the naked eye. And then, yeah, some of these areas where the soft top ended and the old paint ended, I gotta blend those a little better. And then the other side, man, it's a whole different story. That needs a bunch of work over there. Back here, what? Back here does still need some work. Not that much. When you get down here and look at it, it's hard to, it just doesn't really come out well on camera, but it's pretty much dead flat. There's a couple grooves and nicks, but that little guy back there is pretty much okay. So I'll do another round of glazing putty. I got this other stuff from O'Reilly's. It was cheaper and came with more ounces, and Advanced Auto was out. So this is what I'll be messing with today. I've got the fire going in here because it's a colder day. It's about 34, and I want this garage to heat up so that my filler dries in time so I can start sanding. So I'll do another skim coat on those areas with the glazing putty, and then I'll really spend a good amount of time working on these areas on both sides, and then I can pretty much get rid of the rest of the trim and the rear bumper and then the door panels and start sanding everything else down with the 80 grit and start working my way up to 600. Here is what this latest glazing putty looks like. I really liked working with it. I thought it was super smooth and it went on really easily, but I don't know that it's drying as well as the other stuff. It definitely seemed a lot creamier, and I was able to get a lot on this side over here, and you can still see them really well on camera. There's a high spot where the body's bumped out. I'm probably just gonna leave it, to be honest. I could hammer it in, but I just don't think I care enough. And then you can see a low spot, a low spot, and a low spot. These ones, after I sand all this off, I will put some more of this glazing putty in there, and then maybe a little more on that dent on the roof. But otherwise, I think everything else is gonna be fine. But I think it's drying not very well. I mean, this is a thick little corner of it, but I mean, it's been on here for at least 30 to 40 minutes, and it's still denting with my fingers. So I already started sanding a bit by hand up here, and it was working okay. So I'm gonna get the power sander out and take most of this filler primer off, and then this gold glazing putty layer off, and I'll work on these other areas. Alright, I did not like that stuff. So this side, I believe, is pretty close to done. Doesn't look like it, I think, because the primer is soaking into the filler. So I'm actually going to shoot some, I got some paint sitting by the fire that's relatively maroon colored. Back here, I think same concept. I think it's pretty darn close to done. This side is a nightmare. But I don't like that new filler. It didn't dry. I mean, it's hot in here. It's got to be at least 75 degrees inside this garage with that. Ooh, yeah, I can see the heat radiating off of the chimney over there. It's hot in here. I mean, I'm sweating, and this filler is not drying. It's been on for probably close to 2 hours now. And I mean, look at that. I can wrinkle it with my finger. If I just push a fingernail in here, it is still very dentable. So, I don't know. I did sand off about most of it. I don't know if I showed you guys before, but there was a good amount all back in this area, and I just sanded it all off with the power sander. And it gummed up the whole disc like it would do, but the roof pretty unscathed. I only did a tiny bit of areas in the roof, and I sanded those off. They dried enough, I think, and then I hit it with another coat of primer in those areas. So I think the roof is done, but this little part of the roof, there's no way. That's gonna need another round, but I can't sand it yet. I don't know if I'll be able to sand it by tomorrow, or I may just be ripping all this crap off tomorrow if it doesn't dry. I didn't touch anything down here because I knew it wasn't dry, and it's a pretty thick area right here. Something had happened before I got it. It was missing like a big rectangle chunk. I tried to sand a bit of this, but it just ended up starting to gum up the ridges and pull them over, so I stopped. And I didn't paint over the areas that I left the filler on. Let's see, there's still this big ridge right here. For whatever reason, somebody had gouged off the paint. I don't know who had done this, but when I got it, there was no soft top anymore, and this whole area, it looks like someone used like a wire wheel or some sort of a flap disc, and they gouged into the existing paint from the factory, and then the repaint and any filler or anything. So there's a really deep groove here. Once this stuff's done drying, this, what the heck am I calling this? This filler primer. Once it's done drying, I'm gonna get another round of glazing putty, just to try to smooth out this ridge, and then I'll do hand sanding on the rest of that. Still a little bit of a low spot there and a bit of a high spot right up there. That's bare metal, but it's just hard to tell right now because it's not all one color. Just know that I don't like that glazing putty, and I'm going to shoot some color on this side next to see if that is done. Now I'm thinking maybe the metal is a little cold for stuff to dry, because even the paint, I mean, it's taken a lot longer than I would think some flat paint would take to dry. Or maybe this is satin, but in any case, I mean, I hit this with the blow dryer. I just did the black, to be fair, and the black was an actual flat paint, but the red really wasn't drying, and it also wasn't like covering very well. That's not, I mean, that's not, those are dents in the body, which I haven't filled, but that's not, that's all smooth, and there was a big lump there with the red, so that's why I did the black, the flat black. This kind of shows it better. I mean, you can't see the dent. That's just a crumb. I keep touching it, and I'm touching all the sand. But the flat black shows that it's smooth, but then if you look at it in a certain light, you can kind of see some stuff. So I don't think it's quite there yet, but I'm really not getting anywhere with the fillers and the sanding right now. I think maybe the temperature of the metal is just too cold. It's not letting stuff dry because the car was sitting in here before the garage was heated, and maybe that's it, because I'm sweating. It's gotta be high 70s in this garage, mid to high 70s, but I mean, that furnace has been going for a long time. So, and then even the paint though, it just didn't dry that well, so it's still a little bit kind of almost sticky. So I think I'm gonna switch to sanding the rest of the car and then getting the bumper off and kind of just prepping the rest of the thing for paint. The rest of the car doesn't need any body work to my knowledge. So let's just get the fans going, open things up, and start sanding the rest, because it's got to be done anyways. So I'm going to start with 80 grit. The rest of the car is going to get 80 grit, and then we'll probably bump it up. I don't know what discs I've got, but we'll leave the hood and these side panels alone for now. Hopefully let things sit overnight.